Hello everyone, this is Mohamed from Python Ninja YouTube channel, and today we will continue our exercises toward practicing loops in Python. So this tutorial is a straightforward implementation of if break inside for loop. Here is the exercise. Suppose you have a list of monthly expenses as follow. We have expenses are located in a list, and there are corresponding months of these expenses from January to August. And you can see here, for example, for this 1,200, the expenses was in January, and for each item in this list of expenses, there is also another corresponding item in the month's expenses. Okay, write a Python code that asks you to insert expenses. So that asks you to insert means that we will have input. Okay, so we will have input and we want to insert expenses. Then we will cast this input into integer. Suppose that all expenses are in integer. The program will return the month this expense is associated with. For example, if I want to insert, for example, this 1,200, okay, as expenses, as one item of this expenses list, then the corresponding month the program will return January. Okay, now just to make without any doubt that we don't need to have two values within the same list. Let us copy this one. Okay, and let us copy the corresponding months. Okay, then we have to design our input function. So these are expected expenses. Okay, and these are the months that the program will return. So I will have also like expense input. We can name any variable on the related variable, which will be integer of input. And I want to ask the user to enter the expense. Okay, enter the expense, please. And we will see here what we will do. Now we will use for enumerate. For example, we will to enumerate over these expenses, and we will have index and value. So we will have index, or I use usually IDX, and value. So for this value there will be index 0, and this will be enumerate the expenses. Okay, which we enumerate over this. Okay, now we will use if the input expenses will be equal, okay, will be equal to the expenses, okay, of index IDX. So remember that we use the index operator here by using a square bracket. Okay, now what we did so far, we enumerate over this list. We have the number and the corresponding index. Okay, now if the input, suppose you for example inserted 500, if this 500 will equal the expenses of the index, which means we will loop over all indices. For example, expenses of 0 is 1,200. Then the for loop will change. This index will be 1. Then the index of 1 will be 500. Now we have 500 entered from outside and 500 from this list. That means I want to show to the user this information. You spent, okay, I want to open a placeholder. This expense input, the input that you insert in month, okay, I want to open another placeholder, and I want to here put the months of index because it is correspondence. For example, we have here two lists, and we have input from outside. Now we enumerate over this list, meaning that we give index for each value, and in Python index start from 0. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Now what the for loop does here, it loop over each index in this list, and it extract, okay, the expense of this index. Okay, now suppose I have any number from outside 500, then the first iteration will extract this number. It will not be equal to 500. In the next iteration we will come to 500, and this is equal to what the user input have. Now if it is equally, then the condition is matched, and I want to print this show message to the user. Then I want to break. I don't need anything from the program. Let us practice this. Enter the expenses. If I want to enter, for example, 20, you spent 20 in March. Where is March? This is 1,200. This is 500. This is 20. This is March. If I want to practice again, for example, I have 700. I want to run this by enter. Okay, you spend 700 in July. So this is like information based on the enumerate, based on the index. So you have two lists based on the index, okay, of the item in the first list. You can retrieve the corresponding information in the second item, provided that both lists comprises the same number of items. For example, if I have 10 items here, this should have 10 items, and each item here should be connected or have a meaning. For example, this is 1,200 is the expense for January. Okay, but consider that we can execute this in many different ways. For example, if I want to use another variable, for example, I define variable. This variable will hold value now, or we will store a value in this variable, but we usually set default value equal to minus the default value equal to -1, since it's rare to use like negative value in these applications. To be just in the safe side, we cannot initialize this, for example, with 5 with 6 because or with any number, because we want to be avoid of mismatch between expenses and this number. Now I do for loop, but without using enumerate. I can use the range function. For example, for I in range, okay, this range will be in the length. We will study it in the list exercises, but I want to take this and describe this. Now I use the range function, and this range function I build range of numbers. This range of number is a function of the length of expenses. Length of expenses return how many items inside this list. For example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Here the range of 9. So instead of this, here we will find 9. Okay. And it is equal to loop from, for example, from 0 to 9, because we consider the first index 0, but 9 will not be considered, but we will start from 0. Okay, so this length function return to us how many items in the list. Okay, I can use this, or I can count how many items inside the list. What that's like, it's time consuming. Okay, now what I want to do, I want to check if the input, okay, will be equal any of the expenses. For example, it will be equal to the expenses of I. What does that mean? Let's describe line by line. if the expenses in the expense input that the user will enter will equal any of these. For example, for this loop, this I will change from 0 to the length of this. Expense 0 is this, expense 1 is this, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so if this the input will equal to any expenses based on this index, okay, then what we will do, we want to update this folder by I. For example, folder equal I. So this -1 is not exit and I stored here. Then I want to break because I know where the index, which is I. Now we work in index, okay? We know where the index that makes the input equal to the number inside this list. For example, we know, for example, if we have 40, the index of this will be 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay? I take a 3 and I put it here. So, outside this for loop, I can say if holder, you know that character I use when I say not equal, this equal, okay? But I do not need to use equal, I want to use not equal. I use this sign to express not equal. So if the holder will not equal -1, then what I want to do, because here when the expenses and the input expense equal to the expense in the list, we extracted the index and we stored it inside the holder. So the holder will not be -1 anymore, and it will be the value of this. If the holder will not be -1, meaning that the value of this, then the show message should enter to the user, should be given to the user. So I can say use print, okay, the expense input, okay, which the user input in month, okay, and I will this folder, okay, and this will be the index of what? Of the holder, okay. Okay, now we changed or updated this. If not, what I have to do? For example, suppose I entered, for example, 2000 and 2000 does not exist here, then another show message, then the loop will go and the iteration will start, and the matching here based on if condition will not exist, so the holder will still -1, and if the holder is still -1 does not change, I want to use else statement, and I want to use this print message, you did not spend sorry placeholder this input you sent to me during for example during the list of months, okay, of months. Let us now we enter the expense, okay. The expense, for example, it will be 500. You spent 500 in February, and that's valid. But what if I spend 2000? 2000, you did not spend 2000 during this the list of months. Now let's also recap. The main task here is to have two lists with the same equal size, with the same equal number of items. Each item in the first list is corresponding to the item in the another list. Okay, we want to have an input, as what I said here. I did input here. I passed this number. Then I used a hidden variable. This variable will help me to store the index, okay, of the month if the expense, if it is exit, So what I did here, I did iteration over the range of these expenses. Okay, I iterate over each one. Okay, now I did also condition if the input is equal to this one or this one or this one, where there will be equal like this. For example, 500 from input will be equal to 500 from list. Then I update the holder and I break the if condition and for loop. Okay, then this is updated. Okay, this is not -1. So if this not -1, meaning that I found the index of the number in the list, then I show the message and I do here the extracting the months. Okay, but based on the index, for example, if it will be 0, it will be the 1. If the holder will be 2, this will be. If the holder will be 3, blah blah. And this is called list indexing. We will return to this in the wider description when we describe lists in Python. And that's all, guys, for today's tutorial, and see you next tutorial.